for what winning looks like for West versus East. It's Cold War Part 2.
Well, and we're not ready, are we?
You and I, definitely not.
Well, we're definitely not. I haven't spent anything on defence. Yeah, we're not ready. And Ben Wallace is complaining, former Defence Secretary, saying everybody in the UK, all the government are just hoping it all goes away. And they're supposed to be turning up to these training things. It's only the defence people that are turning up, and the rest of the government's just not preparing. We're not in a war spirit, which is weird, because when we had COVID, everyone loved it, didn't they? The wartime spirit, but not now.
Yeah, even football fans go on about wars. And yet now there's a chance of another one. We're not ready for it. Well, I'm sure we'll come back to this story at some stage. Paul, the cover of the Eye, what have they got?
Sign NDA to see charges, new build owners told. So this is homeowners are being told they must sign non-disclosure agreements if they want to see details of their rising estate charges, the Eye can reveal. So this is quite something, you know. Basically, they're saying we will quite happily tell you why we're charging you loads and loads more, but once you know, you can't tell anyone else, which is a sort of strategy that abusers use. So don't they? You know, like, if you look, well, we're going to do this, but it's our little secret, and if you tell anyone, the monsters will get you.
Paul, I don't think you should drag developers in, abusers in with developers.
Who's worse?
Definitely the developers. It's awful. So this is home owners. This isn't people who are potentially going to buy an apartment.
No.
It's people who already own it.
Yeah.
And we're going to charge you more, and we will tell you why, but you can't tell it. What?
Well, it's skullduggery at its best, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or worse, depending on which way you look at this. You know, it's not freedom of information. Freedom of information is you share it and everyone gets to see it. This is you can see it, but you can never tell anyone ever again.
Yeah.
Sounds like it would happen in, you know, the Vatican.
Because there must be some government funding. All these like help to buy stuff. Could we do a freedom of information on this stuff?
It'd be interesting to know. I don't know the answers to that. You've come to the wrong.
This will be something that it was in the contract that the freeholder has over you as the leaseholder. So I don't know. Can you get freedom of information details off a private contract?
I don't know. I was thinking if there's any government funding involved, you might be able to. But
yeah, but if it's the service charge going up, the estate charge,
right.
then and that's the thing, that you can buy a property and the freeholders have the right to increase your ground rent and service charge whenever they want. And the scary thing about this for me is you have to sign it to find out how much it's going up by. So you can't tell everyone, quick, this is what it's... You can't let the scandal out of the bag.
Who can you tell? Imagine if you're living in a family situation and you're living with your partner and you find out. Can you tell them?
Not if she didn't sign it. That's in that dark idea. Let's move on to the Times, Cressida. What have they got?
Rise of the 24-hour wait for a bed in A&E. So it's more bad news about the NHS. A tenfold increase in longest delays since 2019. There's now more than 150,000 patients waited more than 24 hours in A&E before getting a hospital bed last year, which is 10 times as many as 2019. And obviously, this is leading to deaths, because when people go to A&E, sometimes it's an emergency.
It doesn't make sense, though. If deaths are going up, then the queue should go down.
Yeah, I suppose maybe they're just taking... Annoyingly, maybe these people are dying at the 23rd hour. And that's why both stats
Annoyingly.
go up.
Well, it would be, wouldn't it? Spoiling it for everyone else in the queue.
Look, it's a big stain on us as a society, isn't it, that we are unable to look after the most vulnerable. And that's how you judge any community or society, isn't it? How well do they look after the most vulnerable? And that's why these stories are such big news, because we tend not to. When people are at their most vulnerable, when they need medical help, whether that's physical or mental, we just seem to let them down week after week.
And another thing, I think, is one of the reasons why the numbers will be so much higher. 10 years ago, you'd go to the GP if you had an ailment, but you can't get see a GP. I can't remember what it stands for. I think you pronounce it like that.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I've sometimes spoken to my GP on the phone, and then I think I once sent, like, a screenshot. You can have more interaction with the women on Babe Station. So, the fact that you just end up down A&E if you've got, like, a bad knee or something, it's not an accident nor an emergency, but it's either that or the pharmacy and they're closing down, so...
Yeah, or an app. That's the other...
We talk a lot about the pandemic, you know, and the effects on it, long-term effects on it. But one of the biggest effects, it basically was the retirement of all general practices.
Yeah.
Because once they realised they didn't have to do any of the first-hand stuff, they just stopped doing it. And now you've just got a bloke called Andy who did a first aid course 2 weeks ago.
Well, I don't know if that's It's completely true.
Well, it's not completely true. I said it to make people laugh.
Brilliant. But yeah, there's a cultural problem, isn't there, potentially? You know, it's not the most efficient of organisations.
Yeah. It's I can't blame them. If you didn't have to see people's rashes up close, I kind of understand.
Rashes?
Yeah.
The people's gammies.
The final section on this one will go to the Daily Star. What have they got, Paul?
Sausages. I am really upset about this, actually, so it's going to take me a while to get through it. But sausage dodgy is the headline. And this is Esther Ranson, who's going out in style, isn't she? Says the TV dog who growled sausages, who growled sausages, was fake. The owner was squeezing his neck to make the dog sound as if he was saying sausages, which is terrible, isn't it? It's like S&M.
Oh, God. Well, I did think, what were they doing to its throat to make it say the sausages? Yeah, horrible. This is not...
It's not what I wanted.
Not for the British public, is it? I thought Esther Ranson was supposed to be everybody's hero at the moment. Heart of gold. No.
Did they not notice, like, there'd be a crafty hand just in shot, or he's playing it like a bagpipe? Did you not?
Yeah,
Bob Cowley.
Playing it like a bagpipe.
No, shouldn't. I mean, a dog was harmed during the...
Yeah, well, this is exactly it, isn't it? Yeah. You know, I thought the dog was talking, Steve. This was the 80s, and, you know, I really believed in this dog.
If he could have spoken, he would have been, get this guy off me! Got me around the neck! Well, that's it for the front pages. But coming up, we will be talking about Russia, Iran and Hamas and all of that, and so I'm sure there'll be loads to laugh at on the way shortly.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Is it OK to call people fat? I won't call Bev fat because she isn't. She won't call me fat because I'm not. But the fitness fanatic, Derek Evans, you might know him better as 90s icon Mr Motivator, recently told a podcast diabetes have gone through the roof. You should be able to call people fat.
Well, he joins us now. Good morning, Derek. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to see you. So I think what you're getting at is this idea that we've become so polite about weight that we're ignoring the elephant in the room. If you'll forgive the phraseology there, and actually sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind.
Well, actually, you know, this has been taken out of all context. I actually didn't say you're entitled to call people fat. What I did say is that in the 80s and 90s, I remember the way I got into television, there was a gentleman walking at reception while I was waiting for the people I was training. And for some reason, I got up and I prodded him in the belly. And I said to him, you need to deal with that. That was fat. We have a nation where obesity, diabetes is killing every one of us. And unless we take responsibility for our health, rather than waiting for government to do this, government to do that, it is our responsibility, right, to look after our independence and our health. And as we get older, it's even more critical, right? And that's why I'm here as an example saying to you, listen, I'm 71 years of age and movement is medicine. And you can't sit around watching television and not going out to the gym or wherever. You will never, ever be able to look after your family and everything you've worked for. You will lose it. I've never seen a deposit account behind a hearse. No matter what you work for, the most important thing you can do with your life is every hour, do something active. Every hour.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen here with two boat experts, Cressida Wetton, who lives on one, and Paul Cox, who likes a gravy one. To the Daily Mail now, Paul, and a survey finds religious people will believe in something even if there's no evidence. Shocker.
Yes, says our resident scientist. 3 out of 4 British Muslims don't believe that Hamas committed murder and rape in Israel on October the 7th, Steve, a shocking poll claims. 3 out of 4, that's 75%. You know, that's a lot of people. It's astonishing, actually, how many people... I think it just goes to show that how watered down what happened, or the truth of what happened on October the 7th last year has become. The narrative... Because everything now within culture war is about the narrative. Who can get the optics right? Who can win the narrative? And at the moment, very much, surprisingly, actually, Hamas are winning the narrative war. Because you have to equate Hamas with Palestine. It's impossible not to, because they are in charge and they're the reason that we find ourselves in this situation at the moment. And obviously it's no surprise that it's 75% of the British Muslim population, because they are very much going to be on the side of Palestine. And they too equate Hamas and Palestine together in the same sentence. But I don't think they see the issue. I think they just see this as a war of freedom and that they're fighting for something righteous, when at the end of the day, if that's what they believe, they're much, much misguided. Because what we've ended up here with is a terrible situation on both sides that started with the raping and murdering of young people, particularly women, just randomly. And as a result, we had this war, and Israel, I think, rightly are trying to rid Hamas, or Palestine, of Hamas, and now it's just become this war of words.
So, Cressida, the numbers are quite shocking, aren't they? So not only 75%, you're looking at that, that 75% is split down the middle with people who answered, no, they didn't commit this, and I don't know. So that's grouped together. But more shocking for me was it 62% of the general British population believe it happened. That's an awful lot of people who think it didn't.
Well, yeah, and I know this is a bit of a... It's not a very exciting way to argue it, but I'm not convinced that all these people do know what they're talking about. There was a report recently by a journalist who's asking people with a clipboard, you know, do you support... well, actually, he was talking about the Houthi rebels, but it's the same principle. He's asking kids on a campus, do you support the Houthi rebels? Will you sign my petition in favour of them? Kind of implying they're a cool thing. And all these young kids are going, yeah, OK. And they're just not... They're not in on the detail of it. So I think some of this, at least, is that, don't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. A phraseology of the way these polls are conducted is really, really important because, you know, I mean, 46% of those questions are saying they sympathised with Hamas.
Right, well, at that point, obviously, I'm wrong, and that's clearly quite committed.
I think you are right.
I don't know. I don't want to condemn everybody, but
this is the problem with the culture war, right? OK, this is where Lewis is right, and it's the only time Lewis is right. When he talks about Team World, people will choose a side. They don't care what the thing is. They're told that it's their side or not. Is this on my side? Yes, it's on my side. OK, then I sympathise, I agree, etc., etc. There's no critical thinking. It's just groupthink. And, you know, perhaps on both sides we can be criticised of that. But when it comes to something as serious as this, you really, really should engage your brain and start to have a look. That's not to say that we can't criticise Israel for what's happened recently, but at the same time, there are still hostages being held. We don't know what the status of those hostages are.
And I mean, it's a shame you can't have additional questions to these people. Say, how are these hostages being held then? If you almost, it's like you think the events of that day didn't happen. How do you think the end result ended up being like that?
Yes, that's a good point.
Well, that's fair. But I suppose what this story is also trying to say is it's trying to tell us that there's a lot of people in Britain who don't have traditional, whatever they are, traditional British values. You know, for example, if 52% of British Muslims believe it should be illegal to show a picture of the Prophet Muhammad, that's kind of an issue, isn't it? Apparently 16% of the overall public think that as well, which is astonishing. I don't know why they would think that.
Well, they just stood outside a mosque on a Friday because...
Bad place to do a survey. Yeah,
but I think you're right, Cressida. I just... Some of this is difficult to fathom and it's a worry. You know, traditionally when we fought wars, it's us and them. But us and them are all in the same pot now. We're all walking the same streets. And I know it's not really us and them, and to use language like that is a dangerous way to go. But at the end of the day, they walk among us and we walk among them. And it isn't like, you know, when we were fighting Germany, there wasn't like there was Nazis wandering around London. Not in large groups, but whereas now, and I'm not equating all Muslims with Nazis, don't get me wrong, what I'm saying is we have a situation now where the culture war is global, it's in social media, and everybody can be influenced. So you can't just assume your neighbour is on your side.
Well, let's move on to the Guardian, Cressida, and the government is getting tough on benefit cheats. Tell us, who are they going after first?
OK, carers threatened with prosecution over minor breaches of UK benefit rules. So the point this story is making is that people don't have to be very wrong to then have a massive bill. So if you are one of these unpaid carers, you get this benefit of about 80 quid a week. And it limits the amount you can earn. So you can earn, I think it's £151 a week additionally. So you can still go to work, but you can't have a full-time job and be a carer. If you go over that at all, you then owe the 80 quid back. But they don't tell you for ages. So people are ending up with like £20,000 bills because this has been going on for years. And I think it's fair to say that it's the DWP's fault because they should tell people about this on day one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this does happen with family... What are the family payments that people get each week?
Universal credit?
Yeah, no, there's... I forget what it's called, child credit. Right. It happens with child credit. You know, if you earn a certain amount, you will be told after, because it works its way through. There was a time when I was claiming child credit, but was earning over the amount, and then as soon as I was told, they were like, you've been overgiven this much. I gave it all back and said, never pay me anything again, because obviously I just thought it was available to us, so I took it. But this is much more serious because these people can't afford to give it back. You know, it's not like living on £15,000 to £20,000 a year and looking after your loved ones at the same time is anywhere near enough. That's not enough for some people to, you know, fund their pub budget for the year. This is not a good look for us at all. The one thing I do take issue with here is Ed Davey is going on about it, and he's sort of saying, you know, this is terrible of the government, etc., etc. There will be an element of this where people are taking advantage of the system, so you have to be careful of that.
But I'm not sure they will, because the point is that ultimately the DWP is keeping score. So if you're ripping the government off...
That's a good point.
Eventually it's going to come around, according to this. It's just that it's slow, it's not being picked up. They need Martin Lewis to do a campaign and say, this is not right, sort it out.
Yeah.
Really?
It's like you could have a spreadsheet that could do this. Do you know what I mean?
There will be, won't there? And that's the problem, because it's just one person controlling it. Someone in the DWP who every now and again checks in on it and goes, oh, Doris has been overpaid.
Yeah. And the amount of money these carers are saving us by not having these people...
Well, that's a great point.
You rely on the NHS.
Yeah, if they've taken an extra 20 grand, my philosophy would be give it to them, particularly if their situation is a...
Well, your philosophy would be that, but you were claiming child benefit.
Yeah, and I was on 400 grand a year at the time, and I was taking them for every penny.
Typical. To the Daily Mail, Paul, the issue of trans children. And I remember when I was still in education, the only worry I had about sex was if I was ever going to get any. That was a lonely third year at university. Anyway.
Transgender children could face psychological repercussions if they are allowed to change their gender. Landmark review is set to rule. So this is the CAS review. We've talked about it a bit this week already, into gender identity services for children, and has vowed to look at the important role of schools and the difficulties facing them in relation to gender questioning students. And I think one thing this is highlighting, even if we park the transgender issue for a moment, because this is about social transitioning rather than anything else. This is just allowing people to say whatever they are and everybody having to adopt it. As a society, we've forgotten how to parent. So we all play roles, right? Where we're the parent or we're the child or whatever. But as a society, we've given children a lot more authority than they would have had years ago. Now, of course, if you've grown up with authoritarian parents, you think, oh, that's a good thing. However, there was a reason for a lot of those things. You know, a safety reason. We should be looking. We should be looking to grown-ups and leveraging their experience and saying there is a reason why things were the way they were for so long.
I don't think it was kids that started the transgender movement, Paul.
No, it's activists.
I think that's got...
Well, the kids didn't, but they were told that it was fine.
By
grown-ups who should have known better.
I don't know. I think it's just, as it says, it's not a neutral act, is it, to say to a kid, OK, we'll call you one thing at school and you're going to be called something else at home. I mean, how awful is that, to split the child, to force them to lie and to live in two separate realities? that alone is already not OK, before you get to all the other stuff.
Yeah, I was, like, called Paul at school, but at home called the least favourite child. So, you know, it's been going on for years.
Yeah, you get called the same here. It's weird, isn't it? The Guardian Cressida, David Miliband, says the UK has lost its status. Says the man who was once the best Miliband brother. Little side note, the best Miliband brother is Steve.
Oh, is there a third?
Steve Miliband.
Oh,
Nice.
oh my God, I should have got it. It's such a good joke and I didn't even get it. Sorry, Steve.
That's right, yeah.
Brexit has made the UK a lower status nation, says David Miliband. Exactly as you just said. So we used to be a high-value nation, now we're just mid. We aren't what we used to be. So, yeah, the UK has lost its influence. I mean, obviously it has. This is kind of about democracy, isn't it? We've been talking a lot about the ECHR lately and whether or not we want to be involved in that. So the UK has lost influence since Brexit to become just one of many middle powers in the world. That's how he phrased it. In a world where the EU is shipping weapons to Ukraine, hosting 6 million Ukrainian refugees is a major development actor, sits in the G20 and is a regulatory superpower in trade, climate and digital areas. We need our mindset to change. So does that just mean that in the future Labour want to get back in?
Well, it does. It means they want closer ties, I think. And, of course, that's on its way. I didn't vote for Brexit, but one thing I've learned via the Brexit process and growing as a human being is that you're much better to win and lose by... you know, from your own steam, from the things that you do. If you're part of a large group and you're taken down, I know you can be pulled up by it, but Britain isn't a country that necessarily needs to be pulled up. People would obviously argue differently, but from my perspective, I'm saying we're much more likely to be dragged down by the group than we are to be brought up by it. And I think that a closer connection to Europe isn't a bad thing, but I do think that if we were completely tied... The ECHR, for instance, is proving quite the problem for us. And it would suggest... Because the biggest suggestion is if we were to leave the ECHR, that we wouldn't have any human rights of our own. We just wouldn't know how to cope.
Yeah,
which I think is wrong.
Yeah, I suppose we're on a slightly different topic there. Just a little bit of pushback. At the start of the show, you said the UK used to run the world and now we can't even run ourselves. That's the opposite of what you've just said in answering this.
I can't remember saying that, Steve.
Play the clip. Well, we're at the halfway point, and with some corkers still to come, we've got hate crime in Scotland and lab-grown meat, which was my nickname when I was at university. Get the details next.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll hold on to rather unsettled weather across the UK during the week ahead. Further spells of rain in most areas and often quite windy too. Storm Kathleen starting to move away towards the north and northeast of the UK now, but notice low pressure gathering once again towards the southwest, and it's this that will bring further wet and windy weather over the next couple of days. Back to the detail for this evening and overnight, and it's a fairly quiet picture for many areas, at least for a time, because notice there's more wet weather coming in across the southwest of the UK into parts of Wales, and the very blustery showers we've seen recently up towards the northwest will gradually ease into the early hours. Temperatures dipping down to mid-single figures towards the north under the clearest spells overnight, but starting to rise tonight as the cloud and rain comes up from the south and southwest. There'll be some bright weather around tomorrow across southern and eastern areas during the morning, but a showery burst of rain already gathering down towards the south and southwest, becoming more widespread across England and Wales into the afternoon, and some of those turning quite heavy. Northern Ireland, after a bright start, will see some rain in the afternoon, so it's Scotland that's set to see the best of the weather. Here, plenty of sunshine and feeling pleasant enough in light winds, with temperatures up to at 12 degrees. Tuesday looks like being a very unsettled day across all areas. We have warnings in force for wind and rain. Wettest weather, they're likely towards the north-east of the UK, and the windiest conditions generally down towards the south and southwest. But wherever you are, a pretty blustery and wet day to come, and it stays quite unsettled during the week ahead, perhaps a bit warmer and a bit drier come Thursday, but generally speaking, very unsettled. 2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, to the Telegraph poll. Up in Scotland, Humza Yousaf is going after hateful football chants. He says it's not the majority, it's only a minority. Oh, so we don't like minorities now.
Lovely, lovely bit of wordsmanship. Scottish football fans face hate crime complaints from TV viewers, senior lawyer warns. So fear Sunday's match, which is between Rangers and Celtic. They're worried that some of the sectarian songs that might be sung will be seen as offensive, and under this new law, people will be able to complain. And they will be able to. And then it's up to the police to try and work out exactly what's gone on there. And that's going to be very, very difficult. But if you just take this down to the base level, you can't take hate away from everything. If you take hate away, for instance, you don't really get rivalry. And if you don't have rivalry, sport becomes totally unimportant. And you do it. So the idea that disliking something as an emotion is bad is probably the worst thing we can teach anybody, because of course there are things that you're going to dislike. Now, you can teach kindness and, you know, how you can verbalise that to other people. But the point of standing on the terraces on a Saturday afternoon is you can say all the things you're not allowed to say during the week out loud in a tuneful manner.
I did not expect you to say that. So, OK, and I don't think sport does matter, so it doesn't mean I'm just perfect.
Neither does Steve, I don't think.
I've got no hate in me whatsoever. Well, this is a great example, isn't it, of why the hate crime bill is going to be an administrative nightmare, and the police are going to be very, very busy, because obviously you could round up thousands of people at once.
You could do, and that would be quite funny. It would be hilarious.
You just can't do it, can you? You can't.
No, if I was in charge of the police at the Old Firm Derby, which is known as Rangers versus Celtic, I would ask Humza Yousaf to come to wherever it's being held and say, "You sort it out."
Yeah.
Well, he's
people.
This is your vanity project. You sort it out.
If you got all the people accused of these hate crimes together, that could fill a football stadium.
And they will be committing some hate crimes, and they have done for centuries.
Well, I don't know. So my slight pushback on this is, it's not a hate crime to necessarily... Like, the police could say, doesn't meet the bar. This is what they've done with J.K. Rowling, doesn't meet the... And there is a bar that they've got in there, it's just badly worded and has been left up to the police to work out what makes it a hate crime.
Going to this bar is what's causing the problem in the first place.
A couple of those, a couple of pints down you. Next thing, you're doing a chant.
You're chanting hate.
I'm not sure that everybody at a football match is being hateful. That's
No, not everyone. There's occasionally a gentle old lady.
The ref.
Yeah, the ref. Yeah, the ref, who, by the way, is an absolute... No, don't worry about it.
To the Daily Mail, Cressida. Would you eat lab-grown meat? No, I prefer my meat genetically modified, pumped full of hormones and antibiotics, as God intended.
Right. Why do Republicans hate lab-grown meat? War on foods like cultured beef and chicken heats up as lawmakers support $1 million fines for companies selling products backed by Bill Gates and Leonardo DiCaprio. That's great, isn't it? Let's get an actor involved.
It's an entertainment news story, no?
Brilliant. So, yeah, the cultured meat is the new culture wars topic, apparently. You can now... We're getting closer to being able to buy meat grown in a lab. This has been around for a while, but it's very expensive, so it's not really... it's not in Iceland, chicken nuggets yet. DeSantis is having none of it. In Florida, he wants to completely outlaw it. And lots of these Republican places don't like this because they say it's attacking farmers, it's attacking the farming industry, so they're trying to outlaw it. So this is a bit of a Lewis Schaefer Team World type story, because it's all the Bill Gates types and Leonardo DiCaprio who assure us this is the best thing ever. Meanwhile, the Republicans are talking about the risks, they're talking about health concerns, and they're talking about threats to the agriculture industry, obviously. But they're also talking about the process as an affront to nature and creation, which is quite a jump, isn't it? The first two were...
It's big meat, isn't it?
They're hoping it won't be.
But isn't it big agriculture? That might be actually the problem. The Monsanto's saying, let's make it seem like it's a bad thing so that they still keep making their money on the tractors.
Great. But how do we know? Because I'm not sure I would trust either side on this one.
Well, this is exactly it. The question is, why do Republicans hate lab-grown meat? And I guess it comes down to control. So it's about big and small government. Now, you could chuck all sorts of conspiracy theories into the mix, but at the end of the day, I think what the Republicans are saying is, if you hand over the production of our food to these big corporate businesses, they've got control over it, they can put what they like in it, and we're all getting fed whatever's in there. Now, it can also solve hunger, because if you don't need animals and you can just grow it, you know, in the lab, then perhaps you remove the need for all sorts of social problems, you know, and having to fund...
I think that's a really good point, that somehow, in the Venn diagram, it's the same circle. The people who say, all these people saying that we've got too many people on the planet, ridiculous. Every time we've had this problem, technology steps in and provides more. And it's what happened, I can't remember which year this would have been, but before Fritz Haber, however you pronounce it, comes up with his harbour process. We were about to die out. Like, there was not enough way to grow enough crops for people. And now he comes up with this way to split nitrogen out of ammonia, and it's 2 in every 5 people on the planet are kept alive by that. Now, he also came up with some chemicals that help Hitler, so he's not a great guy, but he's saved more people than he's killed. There's the Dave Chappelle bit. But the same thing's going to happen. That, you know, we think, oh, there's not enough people, too many people, we need more food, grow it in this factory. No, it's lab-grown meat.
I mean...
people arguing against themselves.
Well, it's not really there yet, is it? We don't know how... because it's in its infancy, we don't know how brilliant it is. I've heard people, mainly Lewis, arguing that it takes so much energy to make a tiny bit of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, well, surely that's the early stages.
Yeah.
We don't know where it's going to go, so maybe it'll save us all.
Well, that's if you make a green argument out of it, a climate change argument, which obviously none of that exists anyway, as Steve was saying earlier. But, you know, Lewis makes a good point there. You know, there is a lot of energy expended in trying to... in the process.
Yeah, but as you say, it's lab-grown at the moment. It'll be factory-grown by the time you're eating it. No one's growing stuff in a lab for people to eat. That's where you experiment. Factories are where you grow stuff. Anyway, The Guardian, Paul, and a British man has run Africa, but not in that awkward colonial way.
I'm a little bit tired. Britain becomes first person to run the length of Africa. We don't know if that's true or not, but let's just say it is. Russ
You've got to take it on faith. If it's in the Guardian, you've got to assume this happened.
Russ Cook from Worthing reaches Ras Angela, which is in Tunisia by all accounts, after covering more than 10,000 miles in 352 days. And he's raised £600,000 for charity. And, you know, let's make no mistake here, that is quite the feat. They must be quite sore, actually, but that's quite the feat. It's interesting. He had a lot of setbacks, including robbery at gunpoint in Angola, being held by men with machetes in the Republic of Ireland. I mean, the Congo.
I don't want to victim blame, but I bet he secretly loves that, because that's what makes it heroic.
Oh,
isn't
yeah,
it?
he probably paid for them. He's the Jussie Smollett.
Well, he's got form. Previously, he's run from Istanbul to London. He's been buried alive for a week. Who are you, David Blaine? And the fastest marathon pulling a car. I mean, he loves a stunt, doesn't he?
Well, what gets me is at the end he says, oh, I missed my family during this. You've got a family?
I know,
what are you doing? Why do you want to get away from them so much? You're willing to pull a car in a marathon?
It's just a lad's holiday gone wrong, and he just wanted to get away, but he started in South Africa and thought, the only way I'm going to get away with this is if I run to the other end.
But I totally understand the machete bit, because my small version of that is when I do a 5K, if ever I run past some youths, I do think to myself, if it kicks off, I can't run away.
Too tired?
Yeah, exactly. Like, if I'm just about to start running, you've got like a minute's worth of pegging it in you. But if I'm at the end of my half hour, I can't go any faster than this. Have my wallet. That's
Get some drum and bass in your ears, Steve.
Okay.
Always have a drum and bass song ready to go.
Does that help?
Yeah.
To the Metro, Cressida, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is now fighting cancel culture. But if you compare your Johnson to a rock, you are going to get Me Too'd.
Dwayne "The Rock"
Gold.
Johnson launches into rant about cancel culture and being woke. I think the Metro are exaggerating this a little bit because he's quite reasonable later on. But anyway, the WWE legend and actor 51, who had an electrifying win at WrestleMania on Saturday night, spoke out against modern-day culture while denying he had any plans to run for president of the United States. And he really did deny it. And now they're saying, well, he denied it, but he said, I've got no current plans or something like that. So the Metro are going, he's going to run for president. Anyway, he's talking about truth. He says, if you ask me something, a real answer is important and the truthful answer is important. And that may get people upset. So I think he's quite a reasonable guy, you know, and he talks about previously having endorsed Biden, but he says he wouldn't endorse any candidates anymore. He doesn't think the world needs to know about his politics.
Which is a good point. So, Rock, shut up, mate. No, don't actually.
You would not say that if you were here.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'm only joking. I'm only joking. What's his name? The Rock. Yeah, I'm not laughing, yeah? Dwayne. Cancel culture, woke culture, this culture, that culture, division, etc. That really bugs me, he said. So he was quite strong on it. And he's right. It's like, I mean, we've been arguing this for 10 years. And as Nick Dixon would say, reality's now right-wing. And if anyone's challenged on anything... tonight I've quoted Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. I feel like a philosopher. I mean, he's right, isn't he? We want to hear freedom of expression, even the stuff we don't like.
OK. We'll try and do a quick hit on this one. The Telegraph poll, a musical that only hired LGBT actors, gets a trigger warning because of a couple of fruits.
Theatre goers given trigger warning over sound of people eating oranges. I mean, there's no... This is the legitimate trigger warning as far as I'm concerned. Who wants to hear the slap of wet lips? But theatre goers me at an up-and-coming London show have been given a trigger warning over the sound of people eating on stage. Seems fair enough to me. Really? You think so? But you don't think trigger warnings have got to a point that's just absolutely ludicrous? But people slapping their gums around on the bus or something, it's too much. Well, this play apparently is bravely embracing personal, political and cultural dissonance. This work smashes through our violent colonial histories. I think we should go, Paul. I do want to go.
Can I just say, it's misophonia, isn't it? People who hate the sound of people. People who've got misophonia, it's not all about you. People have got to eat. Yeah. Don't listen. Oh, I can't stand the sound.
Get some earphones.
Yeah, get some earphones. Leave. I'm trying to eat. It's not that I've personally been up against this, but I have been. Oh, your jaw clicks. I can't starve to death. What do you expect? Anyway, just the final section to go, and now we'll be talking about nuclear war, a.k.a. Armageddon, and Britain's STI crisis, a.k.a. Armageddon some. Find out details now.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
TfL bosses have come under fire after banning an advert... Oh, God. They've banned an advert for a comedy show because it had a hot dog on it, because that supposedly promotes obesity.
The comedian Ed Gamble has swapped the image of the fast food favourite in favour of a cucumber instead. And there's the cucumber on the plate.
So is the UK turning into a nanny state? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, and nutritionist Olivia Parry. Good to see you both this morning. Olivia, it's a comedy show. He's not promoting eating hot dogs, is he? Is this just a load of nonsense?
The thing is, we have a huge problem with overweight and obesity in this country. We're fourth in Europe. It's big business. Advertising for food companies is big business. They make so much money. You just have to switch on primetime TV to watch, food after food advertisements. And it's for the youngsters as well, who don't have the nutritional education. We're not taught cookery in school anymore. People go to college and to university, they don't know how to cook.
But
and it
forgive me for jumping in, Olivia. Forgive me for jumping in, but the whole point with this is it's an advert for a comedy show.
Yes, I know, but this is a wider issue.
I think it's a load of old tosh, to be quite honest with you. It's a hot dog. In fact, I wish they'd have put onions on the hot dog. A bit of what you fancy won't hurt you. You should eat 80-20 anyway. We talk about a nanny state. I actually think, arguably, we're becoming an authoritarian state. Opinions banned. Comedy banned. The England flag banned. It's like we've got to wear a virtual muzzle.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. To the sun, Cressida. And are we ready for nuclear war? I've been stocking up on candles, but I got those Gwyneth Paltrow candles, and now my backyard is full of the neighbours' cats. Anyway.
You can eat them. Terrifying minute-by-minute account of nuclear Armageddon and the hell survivors would face revealed in declassified docs. This is, as Lewis would say, good news. So these declassified documents, they've been revealed, and turns out it would be really bad. So the docs, which have been obscured for decades, will now bring people to the brink of legal disclosure as they reveal how Washington, D.C. could be the first nuclear target, because it's important. They think that's where he'd go first. And they think he would drop 1 megaton thermonuclear bomb on it. What? Wow. This is just a horrible story about what would happen in Washington, D.C. if it were nuked. And it's quite graphic. It goes into detail about whose skin would burn off and at what distance, that kind of thing. Nothing left in the middle, just a bit of ash. And it's going to be hotter than the sun. Like it's just really grim.
It is grim. We already knew, didn't we? I mean, Hiroshima.
Well, that's what I did think. Like, you read it, and no wonder they're trying to keep it classified for a while, because you read it and think, what kind of a country would drop a bomb like... Oh, yeah. It's not making Russia look
famously, I forget the president after Roosevelt at the end of the war. Anyway, it'll come to me in a minute. But he was totally unaware of what the consequences would, to the extent that they would be. And when he was told about that, it really affected him for the rest of his life. And this is the sort of thing that these... It's a preventative. I mean, whatever way you look at it, Hiroshima has proven that if either side doesn't behave, that's what it looks like. And it's kind of, this is why we've got Cold War One. Well, we had Cold War One, and we now we've got Cold War Part 2. The reason this news is coming out now is because we are probably quite close to that again. You know, it's unlikely to happen because we know what will happen. As soon as that kicks off, it's the end of everything anyway. And it's probably good to have a reminder that it's not all peaches and cream.
So we should drop another bomb. All right, you heard it.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
The Eye, Paul, and it's the perfect storm for an STI crisis. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about this story.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm, the front line of Britain's STI crisis. Live at GB News. A perfect storm of issues is putting sexual health services under severe strain. And this is expert Dr. Claire Dewsnap, which is a great surname. Rates of gonorrhea and syphilis are at the highest levels in decades. I mean, at first it reads like a bit of a humble brag for people who are...
Well, I thought we were all supposed to be... I thought everyone was lonely. I've been watching videos about touch starvation. Have you heard of this?
No.
You've got toddlers, so no, you probably wouldn't.
Yeah. Praying for touch
real
starvation.
people going on the internet and crying into the camera saying they haven't been touched in years, and don't laugh, Steve, just because you've got a family. It's very serious. So how is everyone getting this stuff?
I want to know too, Chris.
It must be a toilet seat.
Yeah.
I caught so many from a toilet seat, including that cold sore, which is weird. But anyway, let's move on. To the Daily Mail, Cressida, and an alpha male boot camp trains men to be husbands by shouting at them. And if you can handle that, you'll be a great husband.
How unfair. Inside the $18,000 toxic alpha male boot camp where men shell out huge sums of cash to be screamed at and earn respect. Would you pay for it? What a personal question. This hardcore boot camp aimed at posh guys with lots of money. It's like
Me?
this kind of cigar club that Jonathan Cogan would spend time in, I imagine. And they go there and they get put in ice baths. They have long runs and bear crawls. That's spelt B-E-A-R. And it costs a load of money and they get shouted at. But men, you're in such a mess, aren't you, men?
They used to call this the army. And now, because, you know, the army's just full of people with gender dysphoria, we now have to pay $18,000, which I guess is about £15,000, to be shouted at until we believe in ourselves again.
Oh,
which
I don't understand that.
It wouldn't. I don't think it would help me. I think I'd probably curl up into a ball and ask for more rashers.
Yeah, there's a bit where apparently one of the larger guys gets shouted at for being fat, and the guy says, "Go and eat a cookie." I'm like,
I could be
that's not an insult. There's a guy who's carrying too much weight being told to eat a cookie is not a punishment.
Go and eat an effing cookie. I think it would be quite aggressive. You still
yeah,
still
I'd love
just as
to
good.
eat an effing cookie.
To the Telegraph, Paul, and a country has banned music that's too slow and too fast. You put something on at 33 1/3, you go off to jail, mate.
A good point. Chechnya bans music too fast or too slow. So Chechnya has banned polluting Western techno and rave music by passing a law that requires all songs to be played in the Russian Republic to be no faster than 116 beats per minute, and no slower, interestingly, than 180 beats per minute. And like all authoritarianism, it shoots itself, because Victory Day, which apparently is a popular military song, I think I heard you playing it in your car, Steve, also falls foul of this legislation because it plays 126 beats per minute.
Oh.
So can we get rid of reggae now? One of my happiest memories was in a nightclub in Bristol years ago with my friends, and we heard this couple having an argument, and out of nowhere the woman just went, "You know I hate reggae," and stormed off, and it became our catchphrase for a while.
Do you think this is the thing that's been holding them back? Music that's either too slow or that will really cripple a society. Is that it?
But Russians love techno.
Yeah. Well, we'll try and get some tunes on later, but that's the show nearly over, so time to take a quick look at Monday's front pages. We can start with the Daily Mail. They've got Rayner's making a fool of you, Kia. The Guardian says carers taken to court over heart-rending minor errors. We covered that earlier. The Telegraph, Cameron warns US over Kyiv aid block. The Financial Times says Biden poised to warn Beijing against aggressive tactics in South China Sea. The Eye, sign NDA to see charges new build owners told. And the Daily Star, sausage dodgy. Well, that was your show for tonight. Thank you very much to my guests, Cressida and Paul. Headline is back tomorrow at 11. If you're watching at 5 in the morning, then stay tuned for yourself to enjoy breakfast. But that's it for good night. Until next time, have a good one.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll hold on to rather unsettled weather across the UK during the week ahead. Further spells of rain in most areas and often quite windy too. Storm Kathleen starting to move away towards the north and northeast of the UK now, but notice low pressure gathering once again towards the southwest, and it's this that will bring further wet and windy weather over the next couple of days. Back to the detail for this evening and overnight, and it's a fairly quiet picture for many areas, at least for a time, because notice there's more wet weather coming in across the southwest of the UK into parts of Wales, and the very blustery showers we've seen recently up towards the northwest will gradually ease into the early hours. Temperatures dipping down to mid-single figures towards the north under the clearest spells overnight, but starting to rise tonight as the cloud and rain comes up from the south and southwest. There'll be some bright weather around tomorrow across southern and eastern areas during the morning, but a showery burst of rain already gathering down towards the south and southwest, becoming more widespread across England and Wales into the afternoon, and some of those turning quite heavy. Northern Ireland, after a bright start, will see some rain in the afternoon, so it's Scotland that's set to see the best of the weather. Here, plenty of sunshine and feeling pleasant enough in light winds, with temperatures up to about 12 degrees. Tuesday looks like being a very unsettled day across all areas. We have warnings in force for wind and rain. Wettest weather, they're likely towards the north-east of the UK, and the windiest conditions generally down towards the south and southwest. But wherever you are, a pretty blustery and wet day to come, and it stays quite unsettled during the week ahead, perhaps a bit warmer and a bit drier come Thursday, but generally speaking, very unsettled.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Thousands of Israelis are currently gathering in Jerusalem, calling for the release of hostages still being held by Hamas. It comes as today marks 6 months since the terror attack on the 7th of October. Families of hostages also joined a rally in London to call for their release, saying the 6 months after the attack have been hell. Well, also marking the occasion, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has said the government continues to stand by Israel's right to defend its security and added the UK is shocked by the bloodshed, and he called for an immediate humanitarian pause in fighting. He also urged Hamas to release its hostages and implored Israel to get aid into Gaza more swiftly. Meanwhile, the Foreign Secretary has used the occasion to stress that the UK's support for Israel is not unconditional. Writing in the Sunday Times, Lord Cameron says there's no doubt where the blame lies over the death of 3 British aid workers, and he added this must never happen again. John Chapman, James Henderson and James Kirby died in airstrikes carried out by the IDF on an aid convoy on the 1st of April. The Deputy Prime Minister has denied claims the UK is failing to prepare for war. Oliver Dowden's defending the government after outgoing Armed Forces Minister James Heappey told The Telegraph only Ministry of Defence officials attended a wartime preparation exercise, which was meant for the whole of government. Former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has backed him up, saying too many in government are just hoping things go away. Police have named a man they're searching for after a woman was stabbed to death in broad daylight in Bradford city centre. West Yorkshire police detectives say they want to trace 25-year-old Habiba Massoum, who was from the Oldham area. They were called to the city centre yesterday afternoon following reports of an attack by a man who then fled the scene. The woman was taken to hospital where she died. And a British man nicknamed Hardest Geezer has become the first person to run the length of Africa. Russell Cook from Worthing in West Sussex crossed the finish line in June.